All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Thanks, everybody. I'm looking at the clock and going, it beckons us. I'm John Strand, your chair. I welcome you all here. I'd like to go around the table. We have some new faces, and we have one online virtually, so we'll start with you, Brenda.
Brenda Derrig, Assistant City Administrator.
Sean Paschke, XL Energy.
Bruce Grubb, Part-Time City Administration.
Greta Graymig, Public Representative.
Van Dow, I'm with Fargo Public Works.
Becky Majerus with Facilities Management.
Julie Bauman with Transit.
Mark Williams with Planning here for Nicole Crutchfield.
Zoe Apsey, Public Representative.
Dave Beats, Deputy Director of Operations, Fargo Park District.
Okay, and we'll let Sean sit down and introduce himself.
Sorry. Sean Radnick, Inspections Director.
Great, thanks, everybody. Our first action item is to approve the agenda of the last meeting. If anybody has any additions or corrections, if not, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'd make the motion.
Got a motion to approve, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? The minutes can be posted. And the same, I'd like to also mention, Bruce, thank you for substituting for me the last meeting. You were acting as chair while I was sitting at home dealing with a bug.
Yep.
I appreciated that a lot. I understand it was a really productive meeting. All right. We'll continue down the line, and as you all know, Bruce is our primary point person, so I always turn to Bruce Grubb and say, okay, what's next? But Bruce, you can introduce our next topic, if you would, the bus wraps.
This is the bus wrap update, and some of you may not know I was out the month of January, and so I was kind of out of touch with things, but was really happy to see that the bus wrap initiative kept going. I noticed the call for artists on the city website. And then watching the morning news one morning, there was a piece on this call for artists. So really nice job done there. The submittal deadline for the artwork was Friday, February 2nd. And so I'm really anxious for the update on what kind of submittals we got and how that's turning out. And Mark, thanks for giving the report today. But I just wanted to thank the planning department, and of course, arts and culture for volunteering to lead the way with this. And of course, Julie at Transit and Abinia with the youth initiative as well. But we tried this once, didn't do so well, and I suspect we've done much better this time. So Mark, can you help out?
Okay, bear with me. I'm going to give my best shot here. Yeah, we do have the bus wrap. And it is in the process, and I have two people sitting on each side of me that might have been a little bit more involved in this than I have, but I'll give you a sort of quick rundown. The theme of the bus wrap was for environmental stewardship and climate resiliency. We had 20 applications, and there was a committee that has narrowed it down to 3. The 3 will end up going to ACC prior to unveiling. And once it goes to ACC to get the final approval, we'll let the SRC know about this before it goes to City Commission. It will be on City Commission. I don't know if either of you want to share any more.
There was like 20 submissions, so it was really great to see all the different artists' work. But there was a good group of people who were judging last week, and it was really hard to make the top 3 choices.
I wouldn't mind adding, though, that I think there's 4 or 5 different departments involved in this. So it was definitely multi-departmental activity.
Yeah, and I apologize if I left somebody out. I knew of the Planning Arts and Culture, Julie and Transit, Youth Initiative. There may have been others as well, engineers, building code officials, I'm not sure, Sean, but really happy with the way everybody worked together to get this done. And any idea on when a selection might be made and we might be able to start creating the wrap? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but just curious if we'd have it done by fall, possibly?
Yes, we would bring it to the ACC for recommendation on February 21st, and it should go to City Commission early March. Hopefully early spring.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Mark. And Casey, would you introduce yourself? We just ran around the table right before you sat down.
Sorry, I'm late.
Okay, it's all good.
Casey Steele, Public Representative.
Glad you're here. You know, I'm gonna put in a little editorial comment. I'm very excited about this bus art rap contest. So the opportunity to reach down into our youth population, and they're passionate about the climate issues. There's, you know, to tap into their energies and their passion, and to get something visible and tangible out of it. I also saw several news reports on it. I know the school district embraced it and put the word out majorly to folks to let them know that this was coming. And that reminds me, when I say the school district, James Hand, are you online with us?
I am, yep.
My apologies, I didn't. James is the facilities director at the school district. Did I get that correct, James?
You got it. Thank you. Glad to be here.
And thank you for joining us. But the school district and us and the partnerships we had with the Youth Commission, with the Arts and Culture Commission, with the Transit Department, with the Planning and Development Department, this was a really fun thing to see unfold, and it'll be fun to see that bus running around town with art of students on it. So, Greta.
I was just kind of wondering how it actually happens. Who makes the rap?
Why don't you answer that, Julie?
We actually have different vendors, a list of approved vendors, so they know what quality of material to use, what kind, how to actually place it, so it doesn't look bubbly and everything else. And so people can see out the wrap just as well as if there wasn't a wrap there. So I would assume whoever's with this committee would choose one of our vendors from our list to do it. And then they actually send us the artwork to pre-approve, and they show how it's placed on the bus. We have certain requirements about leaving certain windows open, et cetera. And then once we approve the artwork, it goes to one of those vendors, and then they actually develop it, and it's just sheets of this kind of plastic feeling material. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
We need to make sure that the vendor that gets selected is one with your approval.
Yes.
That the Transit Department is working on. And I think also, Bruce, isn't this going to evolve into an exhibit in City Hall where the contestants will be, I believe, exhibited at some point in City Hall?
Good.
So they'll get visibility, and there's awards for the 3 top winners.
You must have decided that during my 45-day timeout, but I love the idea.
I think there's 3 top winners, and I want to say there's an exhibit, but this will all be unfolding. And Abinya, who can't be here today, really carried this ball a lot. Mm-hmm. She's our representative from the Youth Commission. I think she was maybe even president, I don't remember, last year. And she's been the primary youth spokesperson for this and is doing a real good, articulate job. So what fun. It's nice to have something enjoyable and fun. Anything else on, any questions or anything on that? Zoe, I got it all covered? All right, Bruce, we'll go on to the next topic.
Item number 5 is an update to the sustainability work plan that you probably recall. We engaged HDR to help us with that, sort of like a sustainability strategic plan. And at our last meeting.
Excuse me, Bruce, just 1 second. We have somebody online that needs to mute their computer or phone, please. Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine, thank you. Anyway, our last meeting back in November, HDR gave us an update to what they'd been working on. And prior to that, the last time the SRC met prior to that, it kind of decided that we should form an internal working group to work with HDR on this. We had an initial meeting, and the outcomes of that is what HDR presented to us back in November. Now, what they have developed and will be presenting today is a pathway moving forward and kind of set up our next working group meeting to discuss next steps. And so happy that Colin Rolfing is with us today, I believe, online. Are you there, Colin?
Yep, I'm here. I was the loud unmuter. I'm at the airport, but I found a quiet corner, hopefully.
Yeah, and he's joined by Brian King in person. So Colin, with that, this is the pathway that we've produced, and anxious to see it.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, Bruce, and everybody else. The intention here was to deliver a pathway for sustainability and resiliency in the future for the city of Fargo. And the most important thing about this pathway are going to be the items in the near term. There are some things identified for the midterm, 2030 to 2040, and then long term, 2040 to 2050. But in order to get really started and have an impact, we definitely honed in on elements on the bottom left there. In speaking with Bruce and Becky and having a working session on site with everybody, we had determined that, I think that the biggest impact we can have is to really go after energy use, operational efficiency, and carbon. And so everything in the bottom left here is what I'm going to be briefly presenting today, because we feel this is the best pathway forward. There's a couple things in energy, in existing facilities and new facilities that we think should be put in place to get you guys going. And in order to accomplish these tasks, we've also identified funding opportunities. Our economists were involved in researching some grants for these efforts. And we feel like for these items down here, not talking about the transit grants that are up here, that's a different scope 3 emissions focus area, but the EECBG, Energy Efficiency and Conservation grants, and the CPRG, the Climate Pollution Reduction grants, that money can be utilized in conjunction with efforts that Xcel Energy have, and I'm glad to hear that Sean from Xcel Energy is in the room today, to get started and do a GHG inventory on your facilities and use this money to essentially come up with a sustainability and decarbonization plan. So the intention is to look at EECBG, which you already have funds for, and get to this climate action plan. And one way we can do this is by getting benchmarks. Benchmarks is one of the most important things for us to get and to figure out how we need to reduce things. You can't manage what you don't measure. And so we were hoping to work with Xcel Energy to do energy monitoring and benchmarking of key facilities, existing facilities, gathering data from them for end uses, to then figure out which energy efficiency measures would make the most sense for the most buildings and the most facilities that you guys have in your portfolio. And this energy monitoring, you should look at any kind of major energy use over 10% of the building's energy use. We would love to have everything put into an Energy Star portfolio manager dashboard, which is a way to track your buildings across the entire portfolio and see which ones maybe need the most engagement. And this energy monitoring and this collaboration with Xcel Energy would allow us to get a much better GHG inventory than just estimating and using industry standards to estimate your benchmark. Once we have this kind of benchmarking and energy monitoring, we can also use funds from this to put in place an ongoing retro-commissioning plan. This monitoring and this retro-commissioning do lead into a climate action plan, but the most impactful thing you can do is to get an ongoing, nonstop retro-commissioning plan that looks to go into your facilities and your spaces on a constant basis to tweak and calibrate controls, look at schedules, ensure that all the equipment is working properly. It's the best way to really knock a 10, 15, even 20% energy reduction use off of your portfolio while you're planning these efforts for much bigger retrofits and much bigger carbon reduction strategies. So the retro commissioning is also one pathway we can take with the EE CBG funds you can see right there. Or we can just go straight into a kind of a decarbonization plan and climate action plan. Now, all of this is great. You can have a climate action plan and benchmarking, but it doesn't do you any good if you have new construction projects coming on board that are being designed and they don't have design standards or energy targets that will allow you to meet your climate action plan. So you can put a decarbonization or sustainability plan in place, but if you don't have proper design standards for renovation or design standards for procurement, those buildings aren't going to be able to prove out future performance. The same thing is true for new and existing buildings, right? So if you're going to have a new design project versus an existing building project, you do need to have design standards in place for things like envelope performance, HVAC system and control selection, fixture efficiencies, and even renewable energy. So the most important thing about this, I think, is kind of looking at what is going to get us to this decarbonization and climate action plan item here. Can we use the money from EECBG? I don't believe the CPRG money was pursued to do a benchmark and put in place a plan for climate action that would allow you to get to 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040 or some year in the future where you feel this is doable. So that's kind of the down and dirty of just these items in the bottom left here. And we think it's the best place to start and the best place to put all of your effort at the moment. So I wanted to open it up to conversations about, these next steps and see what's possible. Maybe Bruce can facilitate there for you guys.
Yeah, the discussion we had late last week was for HDR now defining what their next steps are. We thought once we give this sort of interim update to the SRC, then our working group can come back together to try to define those next steps. By the way, in case you have forgotten, the working group was made up of Commissioner Strand, Mayor Mahoney, Brenda, Becky, Ben, Nicole, and myself. And then HDR representatives were Colin Rolfing, who's giving a presentation, Josh Greenfield, and Brian King, who's at the podium. So it's a good, strong group, and we hope you can have some faith in us to keep this thing moving. Is that accurate, Colin, where you think we go from here?
Yeah, I think the thing is we have to take action on one of these tasks. It's either the benchmarking, right? Get everything benchmarked so we can figure out what to do next, or use industry standards and go right into a climate action plan with real energy modeling and payback analysis. It's kind of where the industry is going right now, where many cities and municipalities are moving because of all of the money coming from the CPRG grants. And these things are being put into place in peer cities. And I think that movement is just key here, right? Keep it going.
Colin, I'm curious about the timing of these CPRG grants. Do you have any sense of how long they'll be available?
Yeah, the first deadline is March for the first round of funding. So they want you to have a climate action plan in place, some level of climate action plan. It can be very approximate in order to receive funds for the next phase, which is right here, to implement. So phase one was $3 million for a state and $1 million for various cities to put a plan in place to hire people to do calculations to make sure the plan is legitimate. Phase two has not come out yet, and that's going to be much more money because that's going to be the implementation of those strategies. Can we fund some of the ideas that you had in your climate action plan? So As of right now, I'm not certain if you can get funds for round 2. You didn't apply in round 1. But this was all so fast for everybody. I can definitely see them opening up a second round of climate action plan grant opportunities in order to get it into this big pot of money right here in the second phase. Because March right now is a little tough to put together a climate action plan. It's just in a few weeks.
So Bruce, we need to make an action, do we, today, or is that for the task
I
force?
don't think so. I think we kick it to the working group, and then we'll figure out the plan for moving forward, for getting our plan completed to position ourselves to go after the big money.
Do we have somebody else to speak to, or are you just available, or?
I'm just available, just with Colin traveling.
So that's the update, and certainly open to any comments anybody might have. It's kind of a big, broad, huge topic, kind of hard to get your arms around sometimes.
You know, my eyes glaze over with stuff like this. Could you, in a nutshell, tell us what we're doing and why we're doing it? Just for the public who hasn't heard this, where they're dropping in and going, what's this all about? Why are they doing it?
Well, the way we introduced this entire committee to the city commission is kind of highlighted through a sustainability and resiliency white paper. I took everybody through that at our first meeting. We've done a lot of things back since 1990, roughly, I think. We went back to, we wanted to, though, we didn't really have any goals established as a city, and we certainly didn't have a strategic plan for accomplishing those goals, and that's what we're trying to get to here.
Right. Is it Brian? Did you have anything you would like to chime in on while you're there at the mic?
Yeah, is this live? Brian King with HDR. The one thing that I have been involved in locally is I've been following the state sustainability action plan that they're starting to implement. They're on their phase 2 of round of public comments, and in talking with the state representatives, we are ahead of the curve as far as the way things are being implemented within the state. So I encourage us to continue to keep our foot on the gas, to continue to move forward, to make sure that we are in the best position as a municipality to capitalize on those state funds that are coming.
Great, thanks, Brian. You know, there's just immense opportunity and funding out there, and we'd be remiss not to go after every bit of it we can. And Bruce, thank you for your leadership and for this group for opening the way forward to try to tap into some of these federal funds. It'll be game changing if we can and as we do it. Anything else, Bruce, on this topic?
Stay tuned. We'll be back at our next meeting.
Great. This update's important. Thank you. And the task force will start meeting when?
I haven't scheduled that yet, but that's on my first to-do list tomorrow.
All right. Anybody else? Anything else on this? All right. We'll go on to the next one. If you'd introduce the number 6, Bruce, please.
Number 6. This is kind of an interesting one. I called it landscaping with native plants and pollinators. We wanted to put this topic back on the SRC agenda because this issue, I'm sure you all know, was recently discussed publicly in front of the City Commission. And it seemed like there were some misconceptions about, is it native plantings or is it weeds? And is something being maintained properly or isn't it? And so, questions that you can't avoid. And so I had a talk with Ben and thought that a potential follow-up to this committee might be a really good idea. You maybe recall that Jennifer Sweatman gave us one of our initial SRC meetings. It was April 13th of 2021. It's getting to be a long time ago, but gave us a presentation on native plantings. And so at that time, Brenda and Ben talked about these are some of the techniques we're trying on some public property, like through flood buyouts and those type things. So I asked Ben if Scott could help us out and come and give us kind of an updated presentation. Scott is here today with Sam Damaris with the Fargo Park District and John DeVries with Minnesota Native Landscapes. And so, did I get that right, Ben, or wrong? United Prairie Foundation. That is a shameless plug for somebody that's not even here. But anyway, glad you could be here and really a timely topic. So Scott, can you take it from there?
And I would just, this topic you may or may not know, but it surfaced at the city commission level after these folks were all working on it, and some of us were kind of caught by surprise. There were some procedural issues about the way it was unfolded. This one person's took a property that used to be his property and turned it into a sustainable, resilient planting for prairie grasses, and somebody else thought it was weeds. And our commission vetted this, and then we turned 180 degrees because the outpouring from the public was substantial. The public wants us to do more pollinator green activities. It was just no doubt about it. We had misstepped in not connecting with that mindset in the public to embrace this, celebrate this, and do more of this. So you folks can now tell us what more looks like and how we'll do it.
Thanks, Chairman Strand, and thanks to the committee members as well. Appreciate the invite today. As we continue to educate and support more prairie plantings and pollinator projects, we're really fortunate to have some really good partners. Fargo Park District, United Prairie Foundation, Cass County Soil Conservation Service, Riverkeepers, Audubon Great Plains. We couldn't do it without the support of these organizations. Sam and his team have been active for over 10 years, large and small projects when it comes to prairie plantings. John with United Prairie Foundation has done quite a bit of work with Park District, more work in Moorhead. I know Fergus Falls, I've seen some of his work there. They're both going to kind of explain their side of the projects. City of Fargo, yes. Back in 2006, actually, we changed Chapter 11 to start including prairie plantings on private property. And it went through a few minor changes since then. There's been some revisions, and there's currently a handful of these land management plan permits that are out there on private property and public as well. Largest one being Microsoft. So a lot of these projects and these concepts are gaining some momentum. Even in 2001, when the city adopted the Boulevard Garden policy, another opportunity for individuals, if they choose to do so, to do something different besides turf grass. So today's goal is really just to educate and inform. I couldn't let it go without talking a little bit about, since it kind of fit the committee, a little about urban forest, benefits of trees and services. So there's a couple slides in there on that, on why it's important to diversify and keep things changing. So with that, Sam, and if you want to jump in whenever, have at it.
All right. Again, thanks for giving us the opportunity, and we're just going to go over some projects that Fargo Parks has done, and really there's a lot more out there in our community that you may not be aware of quite yet that we've been working on originally with Audubon Society dating all the way back to 2014. So, currently in the Fargo Parks there's about 2,600 total acres, and we've got well over 100 acres of native grasslands and prairies, 25,000 trees, 440 plus landscape beds, and a full-time staff of 7 employees, and really up to about 35 seasonal staff if you include our landscape team. So this has been growing a lot over the last few years, and these are all sites that we've worked with Audubon Great Plains, formerly Audubon Dakota, on doing prairie restoration and natural grasslands and pollinator gardens as well. So really since 2014, Audubon has almost solely funded all of these projects through Outdoor Heritage Fund and grant funding and a lot of volunteer projects. So it's really been a great way to utilize funding and working with a great partner like Audubon. Also Prairie Restorations and Minnesota Native Landscape as a contractor that's helped with a lot of these projects as well. This is just a quick shot of our Orchard Glen. I think it was supposed to be a video, but we can skip over that. These are some of the current projects that we're working on. So every year we host an Arbor Day to be at Tree City USA, and we work closely with the North Dakota Forest Service, City of Fargo. So we're planting a lot of trees and getting kids involved every year. This is a great partnership that helps us keep that Tree City USA designation. We also have Reforest the Red, which has been in partnership with River Keepers and Cass County Soil Conservation. So last year we planted 500 large trees and about 2,000 shrubs in 5 or 6 hours down at Lindenwood Park with over 350 volunteers. We had the Shanley kids out there for Deacon Days and 150 students, and they really went to town and planted a lot of these trees. And I think some of the point here with these projects is every one of these were involving volunteers, students, people from the community. And as Commissioner Strand mentioned, that there was sort of an outcry with that recent project, is that people love doing this type of work and getting involved in the community. And almost all of these projects have involved a lot of volunteers and grant funding and different things like that. So it's a great way to get the community involved. This is our most recent project. It's slightly different than the Urban Woods and Prairies Initiative that Audubon Society has. This is called the Urban Pollinator Plots Project, and it's really focused on smaller pollinator gardens and seedings that are kind of right in front of the public and are in maybe a little bit less traditional place. Some of these plantings we've done are out along the river in a nature park, but we've brought some of these into some more highly trafficked parks, some maybe places that you wouldn't expect to see them, like our softball complex, Mickelson Fields. Urban Plains Park is another one that has a lot of native planting now. And the point is that there's a lot of traffic there, so people get to see it, they learn more about it, and we really want to educate the public and increase the awareness. Anybody could go out to Buffalo River State Park, but those are the people that probably already know about that. But if you have 1,000 or 2,000 people a day going by these plantings at Urban Plains, they're going to see it, they're going to want to learn more. They see the beautiful flowers and the monarchs, and that's kind of our goal with this project. So last year, this grant this was funded by Outdoor Heritage Fund in conjunction with Audubon Society, and then also with United Prairie. So we've planted 15,000 native forb plugs in different pollinator gardens, and then we've also seeded 50 acres of wildflower prairie. And again, and also NDSU was a partner on this project as well. But John with United, if you'd like to speak any more about that project.
The biggest thing with this is engaging the public, like Sam had referenced. When we planted these projects at like Urban Plains, the amount of foot traffic coming by us while we were doing the install, I had mentioned a couple of them being our fans, and our team was like, they laughed that we had fans, but there's a lot of people that really like that. But when we did the major installs on these projects, we had large numbers of volunteers organized mainly through Fargo Parks and Audubon, with us supporting them with our staff to do this. And it takes a big collaboration of groups to make it really work. And when you engage a bunch of people into a successful project, it becomes a successful project. And that's just like the prairies need to be diverse and, a lot of things going on. The installs and the maintenance of them are similar. And that's what this team's been able to do in Fargo, which makes them successful and which gets the public engaged.
So one good example, again, this is that North Softball Complex. I mean, this is a traditional sports complex, but all the exterior grounds of it have been seeded in native prairie. So we took a large complex and we're mowing an area of 30 acres that now is going to be prairie restoration. So, and there's hundreds or thousands of people at tournaments there, and they're going to be walking by this and seeing it. So we thought it was a great opportunity to reduce our cost of mowing and bring in a different type of understory management there, and a lot of public traffic as well. There's also some other examples in roundabout plantings. So there's, just in a small roundabout, you can bring in 30, 40 even up to maybe 100 different species in a small area, which is, again, diversifying our community and the flora within it. And then not having to bring a mower out onto those roundabouts and things like that, again, is just to reduce maintenance and really, if we do that across the board and build up acres that we don't have to do traditional mowing on every week, that can reduce our carbon footprint as well. Some examples of different, one of the roundabouts, I think this is out on Veterans. Does this sign exist out there as well?
Yeah. We've all talked about public education, and there is some signage out on Veterans Boulevard. We kind of learned early on that we needed to broadcast it a little bit and let folks know what it was, because it was different from what they were actually used to looking for. And this was actually proposed as part of the Veterans Boulevard construction project. And so it was installed, and I get calls on it every year. It does require maintenance, but it is very unique. And the biggest thing that we tried to accomplish with the signage was just people walking by or biking by, opportunity to educate. Let them know what's happening.
The education part is so key to the prairie installation within the community, because there's less than 1% native prairie left in the whole ecosystem. Our ecosystem is completely demolished. These projects bring back plants and things that people are just not familiar with, and done correctly, they're very attractive, and people just need to understand that it's once they're implemented correctly, that's where you get the public outcry of people really wanting this, because when they see it done correctly, they really like it. So it's just the education part of it is key.
Some good pictures here on the left of our Reforest the Red project at Lindenwood, and then in the middle is Urban Plains Park. And if you ever get a chance to walk down some of the paths there at Urban Plains, there's thousands and thousands of wildflowers right along the trail, and that has been probably one of our most successful projects, where really instantly in a year, we didn't have to wait that 3 to 5 year window to get flowers. We got flowers instantly the first year, and it's really attractive and showy. And you wouldn't have seen a monarch in that whole neighborhood before, and there's dozens to hundreds of monarchs on those flowers. And last year we actually hosted a monarch banding event, just kind of impromptu. This was John's idea, and we had kids come out, and we had like 150 people show up, and we caught about 12 monarchs and put a little sticker on their wing, and then you document that. They hopefully migrate to Mexico, and then if they find one there, then you'll get a certificate back. So it was a really fun opportunity to work with kids, and all we did was bring some nets and have an ice cream truck, and 150 people showed up on a random Thursday night. So it was really cool to see.
That was another event that incorporated a lot. That was NDSU. Tori with NDSU was there, Autobahn, United Prairie, Fargo Parks. It was just a great event. Everyone loved it. The kids were doing sidewalk art, and it was just a really good event.
Well, this is just a couple snapshots of installation. So these pollinator gardens can be installed a little bit more traditionally, like a typical perennial garden. So we've got fabric down, burn holes in them, and then plant these plugs. And really, the first season that you plant these, you will get flowers showing up. So you kind of have that instant success and gratification. So if we can put some of these in these areas to showcase what the seeding is going to look like, that's kind of a strategy that we've used to get sort of that instant effect that this is what it's going to be. And a lot of the struggles with the prairie restoration is that it can take 3, 4, 5 years, and you've got some growing pains, and people just don't want to tolerate it, and because there can be some weeds and things in there. So these are little strategies that we're using to help curb some of that and bring some of those showy, attractive flowers to the site right away. Just a little bit on the trees and emerald ash borer. So with that being in place, I knew kind of once we really started kicking off some of this prairie work, emerald ash borer was going to hit, and I'm going to kind of be doubling my duties there and be really kind of, but it's important because it's and timely in a way, because it's we're going to be losing canopy, and we need to just restore our kind of natural environment as a whole. So bringing in these prairie plantings is only going to help that as well with diversifying our urban forest. Scott, do you have anything to add on Emerald Ash Borer? So just the point of this slide is really, you could have a park that has all Kentucky bluegrass and then as many diversified trees as you want. You could have 50, 60 different types of trees in there, but you've got 70 flora species. Now, if you were to bring in an acre or two of prairie, you could add 100 species to that. So you can double your species of plant composition in a small footprint, and it's really making a big impact on that area. Something you can't do just alone with some of your traditional trees and shrubs that we plant here. These are some good information that iTree tools can produce, and these can be utilized by the city and this committee as well. So these are just the park trees. So numbers like 16 million pounds of carbon storage in the park trees that are inventoried. So we have all this data kind of at our fingertips, and they're even building some of this data for prairie restoration and prairie plants as well. So we can use these to bring monetary value to what the trees are providing to our community. John, this is kind of right up your alley if you want to talk about why prairies are important.
The root, when you look at a prairie, it's really tall, or in a tall grass prairie. A normal non-native, which dominates our landscape grasses, have roots that are 2 inches. Your yard, it would be Kentucky bluegrass, 2-inch roots to another variety, smooth brome, would be about a 6-inch root. When you look at the prairie plants, they about equal or double their height. So if you have a 6-foot tall, big blue stem plant that has a root system over 6 foot deep, is what that acts like is a sponge in rain events, because those all absorb. When you get a rain event and it overflows on Kentucky bluegrass, once it saturates 1 inch of roots and plant matter, it's this hard packed dirt and the water runs off. Well, it also helps with carbon sequestration. It sucks in all that into the root system. So not only does it help sequester carbon, it helps in rain events, and it helps cool, because those shallow rooted plants warm up so fast and it doesn't cool. So the ecosystem is really out of whack with what's currently out there. And when you bring in all these prairie plants, you had the diversity, like Sam was saying, in the ecosystem, and it really is an ecosystem function that the city is making great moves on improving. And this only gets better over time. The more time it's done, the better you're doing for global warming. If our whole ecosystem was being restored, and that starts from the city. So you're starting something that'll move out. The more successful we are here, the more you're going to start seeing in county ditches and different things. Where at the North Softball Complex, we've talked about a ditch up there. There's just so many places that you can implement prairie that benefits the community.
And we really feel like there's a process and a better way to do it that can be more successful, and you don't have to go through that 5-year kind of growing pains that might be seen in some of the struggles. We're going to plant prairie, and then it's going to take 3-4 years of it being weeds, and it's going to be more maintenance than you think. But we did experience some of that with some of our earlier plantings, but we're really strategizing to do things differently and to do things better for a little bit more, and maybe to scale it down a little bit and bring it into some areas that are a little bit more manageable and where we can get higher quality in that 2 and 3 year stage. Really, site preparation is the biggest thing and the key that John has drilled into my head. And, this year we even planted soybeans in some of our parks as a cover crop. And so, we got some questions about that, but really trying to use the gold standard strategies to do the best we can. And, we got some questions and we're willing to answer those, but we feel like, doing the preparation the right way the first time will really help us in year 2 and 3.
And we have a unique project at Rose Creek Golf Course that's really quick establishment. That's what, a year old, Sam?
Yep.
And it's taken the amount of traffic that goes, I mean, they book that golf course every day. The traffic there is just positive responses from it.
So I think where we plant these is, there's a lot of just kind of gray areas all throughout the city where we could strategize to put these that aren't going to impact your sports turfs, aren't going to be right up against people's yards where you're going to get a lot of calls and complaints about them and potentially weeds getting into them. So I think if we do it in an intentional way and kind of pick the easy areas first that we know could be done and aren't going to have a lot of controversy, we can continue to build acreage of prairie without really making an impact to people's traditional use of some of these areas. So floodplain, riparian corridor, I'd love to see some prairie restoration done on levees. It can be mowed and the levees can be assessed and surveyed anytime, really. Landscape beds throughout town. Our biggest thing is areas that don't impose on private property. Power line and utility easements would be great because you can't put trees and things underneath them. So having prairie underneath power line easements. And then also we've been working on retention ponds and Scott has some projects on roundabouts and medians. Just another example that we did a pollinator garden out at Orchard Glen. So we had over 20 volunteers and planted 6,500 plugs, which is kind of like an annual flower plug in 4 hours. So we had a huge turnout there and we're really able to do work that would have taken our team over a week to do. And we could do this in 4 hours with volunteers. This is some cool information on just a cost comparison. So of course there is a more upfront cost compared to traditional turf, but if you look at the subsequent years, there's really less and less maintenance, and long term it's going to be a greatly reduced cost compared to maintaining traditional turf grass. Again, another slide on there of, in the subsequent years, you're looking at, a sod lawn at $11,000 versus a native planting of $4,000 by the time you've got it all said and done. So really, our vision is to continue to work with these local partners, create a position and a team that's looking and thinking about this around the clock, and work with the city of Fargo, because we have a lot of joint properties that, it's a flood blyout, then a park, and there's becoming longer and longer expanses of those areas. So we'd really like to continue to work with the city, the park district, because the parks are great opportunities for these types of sites. We just have more open space and green space and landscape beds and things like that, and work with those local partners to get grant funding and create more and more of these spaces and continue to make them more normal and common within the park system and the city of Fargo. So I think those are really the factors of our success. Right now we've been doing a lot of these things. We don't have anyone dedicated full-time to that, and that's something we're considering, is just as we want to continue to push forward, we're at a point where if we want to do that, we may need some dedicated full-time staff that's thinking about this around the clock. And then I think the other big thing is just continuing to educate the public and answer those questions, and do this in a strategic way that the public will want to see and want to be interested and gain more traction on. So unless you two have anything else, I think that's our presentation for today. Any questions?
Anybody at all? Go ahead, Gunnar.
Thank you. I was wondering what the soybeans were about. I've seen that. I was wondering, since these prairies co-evolved with the influence of large herbivores and fire, how do you replace the actions of those in your long-term maintenance of these prairie plantings?
Some of them can be tolerated with mowing, and some of them aren't being burned. So with the correct burn plan and the right partners, they can get fire. We had fire in or Sam did in the parks in Forest Glen Park this last spring. they're frequent.
Yeah, so Forest River in June looked like an asphalt parking lot. It was black, all burned. And then by 4th of July, it was waist high and green and lush again. So, I mean, we have been burning some of these sites, but then otherwise they can be, like John mentioned, mowed and baled and managed that way where we can't burn them.
So it is good over the long term to do some sort of maintenance.
They need some maintenance through time, correct. And some people, you know, on a dormant prairie in certain areas aren't the most attractive. They can be baled, mowed to reduce the thatch layers in them in the fall to where it isn't, you know, that it works with the community that they're in. Like Sam said, there's a lot of places that they're planted now.
If a community or a neighborhood wanted to have one of these prairies in their neighborhood, what would the process be?
On like on private property or public or?
Like if they had a park and they're interested, like wanted to talk about if some of the land could be used for.
Yeah, I mean, in a park setting, it would be simply just making the park district aware of that, and then we, you know, identify that site, see if it's appropriate, and kind of work with the city of Fargo too. I know there's still some land development code things and public health things on the amount of property that can be unmowed and things like that, but that would sort of be the process. And then there are other local groups like NDSU, and then Cass County Soil Conservation District has programs where you can purchase plants from them and plant a pollinator garden like at your home, and they'll reimburse you for the plants and things like that. So there are current programs out there that are already doing that.
Anybody else? I'm curious if Sam, you mentioned the future of maybe having a dedicated person for this. Have we ever talked about, do we ever like share with the city and the parks and the schools and the universities, share positions like that and kind of combine our energies? If that would, I'm not sure, Ben?
Well, that is actually something Sam and I and Dave have been discussing. We started small this year and we did a financial contribution to some of the planting programs and some of the stuff that they already needed some assistance on for the grant, for the city share or the park district share. So that was kind of step one. We're kind of going to put something together and try and make a run at it, kind of like what we have with the Vector program with Cass County. And so I think it's something that can work together as these pollinator gardens and prairie plantings grow.
That'd be really fun to see. Anybody else? Great presentation, you guys. This is a really important topic for all of us, and I'm guessing too. There's folks out in the rural parts that are paying attention to what they can do in their properties and their lands and their farmsteads and their ditches and so on. So it's got a far-reaching impact.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. And if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out and we'll let you know more about what we're doing. And again, we just think this is a really important way that we can continue to diversify and make our community a better place to live.
Okay. And I think, Bruce, you're right. Our very first presentation was Jen Sweatman on sustainability and carbon sequestration with prairie grasses and plants. That was the very first topic I think
I will never forget the picture of the root depths based on different, it was just crazy. So, yeah, interesting.
Anything else for that topic? We'll go on. Bruce, would you introduce our next topic?
Yes, thank you. Chairman Strand was recently contacted by Ryan Phelps. Ryan, you're still here. Yeah, he's making his way to the microphone. Anyway, he contacted Chairman Strand about funding opportunities available to municipalities through the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. I think the chairman referenced that earlier. But this was specifically funding that was available for building and owning clean energy generation projects. And the chairman thought that Ryan requested a meeting with the chairman and I and thought, why don't we have this introduction given to the entire SRC? And so Ryan and his partners with the Center for Public Enterprise, that team He'll introduce them shortly, I assume, but they agreed to present to us today, so we were happy to get them on the agenda. And with that, Ryan, are you ready to take it away?
Yeah, I think so. Oof. Yes, thank you, Mr. Grum. My name is Ryan Phelps. I am a student at the North Dakota State University. I just moved here about 6 months ago. And since I grew up in Mandan and Bismarck, North Dakota, so I've been very interested in, energy generation and, that side of the state for a really long time. As a kid, I always loved the windmills. Who doesn't? So when eventually I'd done some research on some of the new incentives for clean energy and also clean and efficient uses of energy. And I really wanted to share that with some folks who may be able to use it. So here I am. But anyway, so our presentation is called the Clean Public Transportation and Power for the City of Fargo. It's mostly focusing on the financial incentives passed in the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. So throughout 2022 and 2023, the 117th Congress passed legislation containing trillions of dollars for the deployment of pollution-free and energy-efficient technology. Local governments, in particular, have been entitled to dozens of billions of dollars in grants and other incentives. At the same time, advances in the fields of energy generation, heating, cooling, and transportation have driven the cost of pollution-free technology to their lowest levels yet, often cheaper than traditional alternatives without subsidy. One example that I actually stumbled upon after completing this presentation on the North Dakota Secretary or Department of Commerce website was a research paper by the University of North Dakota's Energy and Environmental Research Center found that in 2016, a $20,000 solar panel array on a residential building would, over the course of its 30-year lifetime, save the operator about $14,000 with a $7,000 subsidy. That data was from 2016. Since then, solar panels have gotten lighter, cheaper, more efficient, and the battery storage technology that is deployed alongside it has also advanced incredibly. So if they ran that study again, I'm sure they would show even more cost savings today. Our proactive city leadership is required for Fargo to take the full advantage of the funding available. There's a loan and use its institutions and its access to public lands to lower energy prices, improve air quality, and create a more resilient energy system, as long as encouraging innovation and growth. So the main bulk of this presentation is about clean energy tax credits. The U.S. federal government has a long history of subsidizing clean energy production by providing businesses and individuals tax credits to reduce their federal tax burden if they invest in said technologies. Tax credits are as good as a cash subsidy, like a grant, if the entities or individuals that are receiving them have more tax liability than tax credits. And historically, they've been very good at driving clean energy deployment. An example of this shown on the slide is a graphic provided by the Penn State University tracking the deployment of wind power in the United States, along with the implementation of the wind production tax credit that was first introduced in 1999. The wind production tax credit is a good example to look at because it has been subject to various lapses and temporary extensions, which can allow you to see its impact on the deployment of wind energy, as every time after the wind PTC was extended, you can see deployment and also investment in wind technology skyrockets. And when it lapses, it collapsed. Now, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 was a sweeping energy bill that introduced over a dozen new or reformed tax credits, offering federal subsidy to a wide variety of energy technology until 2033, which is very important as we saw in the last slide, lapses in these tax credits can lead to a very inefficient deployment of the technology with starts and stops and many complications on the manufacturing and production side of things when you don't have a consistent source of funding, as these entities do now over the course of 10 years. These new tax credits cover all forms of clean energy production, including solar, wind, geothermal, nuclear, as well as clean transportation, hydrogen production, energy storage, and advanced manufacturing. The Inflation Reduction Act introduced elective pay, a provision that entitles public entities such as the City of Fargo and also the Cass County Energy Cooperative the full value of clean energy tax credits regardless of their tax liability, which for a public entity would be zero. Elective pay effectively turns these tax credits into a form of non-competitive grants for quality or qualifying investments with no cap on total expenditures. If you build clean energy generation technology owned by the city or invest in procuring clean transportation, such as electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, or hydrogen vehicles, and submit the proper documentation to the IRS, you will get the money entitled to you. This is not a competitive grant. It's very important to remember that. So today we're going to focus on several elective pay eligible tax credits and how the City of Fargo could potentially use them to diversify and expand our energy system in a clean and sustainable way. The first credit we're going to be covering is the Credit for Qualified Commercial Clean Vehicles, or 45W. 45W offers a refund on the cost of purchasing electric vehicles, hybrid electric vehicles, or hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. This credit is equal to 15% of the cost of hybrid electric vehicles and 30% of the total cost for fully electric or hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. For an example of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, which are not as common, Amazon, the Amazon Distribution Center in Fargo, FAR1, actually has extensive use of them as part of the company's own internal climate goals. As you can see there, they use them for stocking their machinery, stuff like that. The Credit for Qualified Commercial Clean Vehicles, and this is the corporate side tax credit, I should add, that municipalities are eligible for, not the individual side tax credits, do not have any domestic content requirements. So the city does not have to choose vehicles that have either been manufactured in the United States or vehicles with battery components made in the United States. This is a very significant limitation on the tax credits for personal ownership of individual clean vehicles. Economics of fleet electrification. EVs today can have higher sticker prices than internal combustion engine vehicles. However, lower fuel and maintenance costs leads to lower total cost of ownership in the long run. Showing this, I have a graphic provided by the International Council of Clean Transportation of data collected from auto manufacturers of what they believe what their targets are for the prices for their prices of electric vehicles. And what the data shows is that currently electric vehicles with a more limited range between 150 and 200 miles on a charge that are in smaller vehicles such as suburban sedans already have a lower total cost of ownership than internal combustion engine vehicle counterparts. And the way to best take advantage of these cost savings from electrical vehicles is to replace internal combustion engine vehicles that are used for frequent travel in a limited range, such as urban rideshare services. A key part in the price decline of electric vehicles in recent decades comes from the falling costs of lithium-ion battery packs. This graphic here shows the projected costs of fully electric vehicles compared to the pink bar on that graph is hybrid electric vehicles, and the dark, flatter one on the bottom is internal combustion engine vehicles. And you can see that most auto manufacturers believe that the cost of the initial purchase cost of a fully electric vehicle will fall below the purchase cost of an internal combustion engine vehicle of the same type somewhere around 2026 or 2027. And this is, as I said, fueled by the falling costs of lithium-ion battery packs. This is from the same source. You can see Tesla, who is the company that is most ahead in this area, has seen their cost for dollar per kilowatt hour of their battery packs fall from $150 a kilowatt hour to $100 a kilowatt hour just from 2018 to 2022. So as this trend continues, the initial purchase cost of electric vehicles will fall compared to their internal combustion engine vehicle counterparts. Along with the credit for purchasing clean vehicles themselves, there's also the alternative fuel vehicle refueling property credit, which is equal to 30% of the cost of installing refueling infrastructure for electric or clean fuel burning vehicles, up to $100,000 in non-urban or low-income areas. This credit is a little bit unique. It does not apply to areas outside of non-urban and low-income areas. Qualified refueling infrastructure includes that which uses electricity, hydrogen, biodiesel, ethanol, and propane as fuel. Charging ports for 2- and 3-wheeled electric vehicles, such as e-bikes, are included, as well as vehicle-to-grid charging technology. Vehicle-to-grid charging technology is a new advancement. It allows, as well as an electric vehicle taking power from the grid to charge itself, vehicle-to-grid technology allows the battery pack of an electric vehicle to function as a residential battery pack when not in use, storing energy from times when energy demand is low and that electricity is cheap, so that the household can use it when electricity demand is high and expensive. This offers significant cost savings to the system. It stabilizes the grid, as all electricity storage does, and also smooths the demand for electricity throughout the day, which has resiliency and cost-saving implications. Here is a graphic that I developed. Oh wait, I just realized I don't have this full screened. But anyway, here's a graphic I developed that showed the areas in the city limits of Fargo that are qualified by the IRS as low-income areas and therefore qualify for the alternative fueling tax credit. And as you can see, it's more than half of the city limits, which is good for this case. The most promising application of the clean transportation for the city of Fargo is the decarbonization of heavy-duty vehicles, which greatly reduces the city's air and noise pollution. Heavy-duty vehicles produce up to 25% of U.S. transportation emissions, despite making up only 4% of vehicles. Diesel vehicles, in particular, have a variety of negative health consequences from the fume leakage associated with them, as well as their the amount of noise pollution they produce, as electric vehicles, by contrast, are nearly silent. As you can see in the graphic, it shows the West Fargo Public School District Transportation's Director, Brad Riemann, with North Dakota's first electric vehicle school bus, which is a very good application for this type of funds, because diesel school buses have a lot of negative side effects on children's health, including higher risk of asthma development. Along with the elective pay tax credits, there's also the EPA Clean School Bus Program that I thought I should mention. This is a combination of grants and rebates with a total value of $5 billion dispersed to eligible school districts from 2022 to 2027 to replace the retiring diesel school buses with low and zero emission buses. And this doesn't actually just include electric vehicles. This grant can also include compressed natural gas and propane buses. Public school districts located in low-income communities, such as the Fargo School District 1, may receive up to $345,000 per bus on top of the elective pay tax credits for the charging infrastructure and for the vehicle themselves. The elective pay tax credit benefits the city is entitled to would be added to the money they would get from something like the EPA Clean School Bus Program. Up here, I have a chart from the Environmental Protection Agency showing the different amounts of money for different types of vehicles on different school districts. Moving on from the clean transportation, we also have the Clean Electricity Investment Tax Credit, or 45E, which is equal at base to 30% of the investment costs required to build clean electricity generation and storage projects, as long as wage and apprenticeship rules are met. And that is without bonus credits, because there are bonus credits that can increase the federal share of a clean electricity project from 30% to 40, 50, all the way up to 70% of the total project cost. All sources of clean electricity qualify, including but not limited to wind, solar, geothermal, nuclear, and hydropower, along with forms of electricity storage. To receive elective pay for the Clean Electricity Investment Tax Credit, projects must be constructed using a certain percentage of U.S. produced materials or receive a waiver saying that those materials could simply not be acquired. Complying with the domestic contents requirements also qualifies projects for a 10% bonus credit, which makes the baseline level for public entities such as the city of Fargo receiving the Clean Energy Investment Tax Credit to 40% of the total project costs. And the elective pay elements of the Inflation Reduction Act are most important, I would say, for the Clean Electricity Investment Tax Credit, because of the fact that many of these projects have a high upfront capital cost and not a whole lot of business entities and very few individuals have enough tax liability in order to monetize the business and individual side tax credits. The ability to receive those benefits as a cash payment is very, very useful here. Along with the base credit of 30%, along with the 10% domestic content requirement adder, there is also the low-income community bonus credit. The low-income community bonus credit offers clean energy projects that qualifying with a project capacity of 5 megawatts or less, a 10% bonus if they are located in low-income communities, such as the graphic I showed earlier here, or unrecognized Native American land. This bonus credit jumps to 20% if the energy investments are part of either a housing project participating in covered health programs defined by the Violence Against Women Act of 1994. These include housing projects that qualify for the low-income housing tax credit, as well as projects that accept Section 8 housing vouchers, as well as housing funds from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That 20% bonus can also be achieved by making the project a dedicated, qualified, low-income benefit project that directs at least 50% of the financial benefits of the electricity production to low-income earners. And when it says financial benefits, that includes selling low-income earners lower electricity that is at lower cost than what they could acquire otherwise. So if, let's say, the city would set up some wind turbines near a residential center and provide and sell that electricity to them at a lower rate, that could qualify as a qualified low-income economic benefit project.
So Ryan, we're going to need you to climb up into the balcony and summarize a little more each of these categories so we can finish in time that we have allotted today. But so stay on your task, but just kind of start highlighting and summarizing if you could. I hate to do this, but.
Sorry. So along with that, there's also the Energy Community Bonus Tax Credit, which in areas that had a lot of fossil fuel economic dependency that do not have that, or an easier qualification for this is shuttered coal plants. Projects will get a 10% bonus credit with no size limitations, which leads to massive clean energy projects on former fossil fuel infrastructures, such as Xcel's Energy's planned 700 megawatts Sherco solar power plant in Minnesota, depicted to the left. And this is the depiction of all of the energy community zones in North Dakota currently. The reason why it's so important for the city of Fargo to invest in these things, along with the lower costs and climate and health benefits of clean energy, is that the U.S. economy is set to go through an expansion of electricity demand in the next few years, driven by a few factors, such as the coming growth of electric vehicles, data centers, electrified heating and cooling, an increase in manufacturing, and green hydrogen production. So, and these are some graphs showing the spread. There has been a sharp increase in the amount of manufacturing investment in the last few years, sparked much of it by legislation incentivizing the production of semiconductor manufacturing centers, which require an enormous amount of electricity. There's green hydrogen, which is an industrial project used by consuming electricity to split water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen, which is used as a feedstock for ammonia production, as well as industrial processes. There is a lot of money in North Dakota being thrown at green hydrogen production. There's a $1 billion grant given to UND's Energy and Environmental Research Center to pursue this, as well as billions of dollars being put in by industry leaders like Bakken Energy, Xcel Energy, and Mitsubishi Power. Along with benefiting from the electric pay tax credits that Fargo's businesses and individuals could not, the local government could also play a role in advancing innovation in the energy sector. Private capital can be hesitant to invest in first-of-a-kind or first-in-a-region technology or engineering designs, as the first project bears more risk than the second, third, or fourth with relatively little benefits. Public procurement of such technology can avoid this first mover problem and create a more equal playing field among private players, where that outside risk is taken by an outside source, which enables competition. One of the ways you could combine all of the, implement the credits would be a virtual power plant, which is a name given to a combined system of residential electricity storage, such as lithium-ion batteries, distributed energy production, such as residential solar or small wind production, and software that acts to limit energy consumption when prices are high, or or to store residences' batteries with low cost power during times of low demand, and to use that power or sell it back to the grid when costs are high, it's a very efficient system that adds a lot of resiliency. And along with that, there's also commercial and utility scale projects that could be funded. These produce a lower cost of electricity, though they have more challenges in planning, specifically transmission. Commercial scale projects are an in-between between utility and residential scale projects used often in industrial centers. Something would be like a warehouse with solar panels on the top. These can generate an awful lot of electricity without the transmission challenges inherent in utility scale projects. There are some things in utility scale projects that are very uniquely relevant. There's Form Energy's iron air batteries are a new advancement in electricity storage technology that can only be used on a large scale, which can store electricity for up to 100 hours on one charge for cheaper than the cost of lithium-ion batteries, which can only provide 6 hours of storage per charge. There's also advancements in different types of clean energy technology, such as enhanced geothermal energy, which basically uses fracking-like technology to make heat and energy from the earth accessible in more areas than ever before. So that's an end to my side of the presentation. I want to thank Commissioner John Strand and Mr. Bruce for allowing me to speak today. If the gentleman from the Center of Public Enterprise, Chair Galaw and David Arun are on the call, I'd like to hand this over to them for the last few minutes. But I'm not sure if they are.
Yeah, and we're kind of up against the clock here a little bit, but we do have one person that would like to comment in the public comment piece, so I think we want to save time for that for sure.
There should be, but I mean, I can't see.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Advait from the Center for Public Enterprise. I'm not sure if folks in the chamber are able to hear me. I'm happy to just provide a quick overview of the slides we provided in about 3-4 minutes, and then allow for the comment. I want to respect the council's time here. Cool. Ryan, anyone else? Are folks able to hear me from the chamber?
We are, yep.
Great. Within the slide set of slides you've been provided, there's a slide with CPE at the very end of it. If you're able to pull that up. I'm also happy to try sharing my screen if that works for you all. Perfect. Thanks so much, Ryan. Okay. I'm Advait. I'm the Energy Policy Associate at the Center for Public Enterprise. My colleague Chirag Lala is about to hop on and will provide a little bit of extra information on our presentation. The two of us work on energy policy, and we work a lot on implementing aspects of the IRA that Ryan has just detailed. To keep the committee's time short so we can get to comments. This presentation generally goes through how elected pay functions, and Ryan detailed some of that. But essentially what we want to stress is that the city of Fargo has really good opportunities to set up institutions that can undertake public development of renewable energy resources and other eligible projects. But to do that, they would have to invest in just staffing capacity, partnerships, the ability to identify projects. But in doing so and making elected pay accessible to the city of Fargo, that would actually allow a major reduction in the cost of capital for financing many of these renewable energy developments. Elected pay essentially makes development of public energy resources a lot more profitable. And I think some of the slides in this presentation detail why and how that's the case. At CPE, we work on making sure that a lot of folks are more familiar with that with why that's the case. And we have some resources at the end of our slides with which you all are able to actually play around with some calculators and understand some of the capital stack diagrams that Ryan is showing right now. I don't want to get into that in too much detail, but the other thing that this presentation details is that to actually access elective payments from the IRS after having placed renewable energy projects in service, there's a portal that the IRS has created for tax-exempt entities, such as city governments, to register the projects they've built, placed in service, and to receive payments for them. We've been working on understanding the portal that the IRS has put up, and while there's still some regulatory uncertainty as to what the city of Fargo could do to, say, partner with other developers or to meet domestic content requirements as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of stuff that's been set up at the federal level to make achievement of elective pay project development a lot more easy for folks who might have not heard of it before. Anyway, I'll stop there. I'll let Chirag, our energy policy director, speak a little bit more in case I missed anything. But that is a very, very high-level summary of what we can talk about and what the Center for Public Enterprise does, I guess, on the day-to-day.
Thanks. Thanks, Adit. Are you the one in control of the?
Ryan's got it.
Ryan's got it. Okay. Let's go up to the first one, and we'll start from there. So just before I start, hello everyone. I'm the Energy Policy Director at the Center for Public Enterprise, and I just briefly wanted to talk about some of the logistical issues surrounding the access of the elective pay credits. So Ryan gave an excellent presentation on which credits are available. There's a nice list available for them on the IRS's website. And the basic premise is if the city of Fargo wants to do something directly, whether it's purchase an electric vehicle, build a solar array, build a storage facility, et cetera, and it wants to take ownership of that facility onto itself, then once the facility is in operation, or in the case of electric vehicles, once the purchase has been made, that money can be dispersed directly to the city of Fargo. Ryan also mentioned, and I think this is vitally important, that there is no cap on how many times the city can claim this money, nor is there any restriction on which of the city's instrumentalities or organizations can actually claim it. If the city has nonprofit partners that it works with, they too can claim it. Any entity can claim it multiple times, either for the same purpose or for different purposes, depending on which credit is being accessed. So the important thing to think about with respect to these credits is what exactly would the city need in order to be able to access them? Staffing capacity, mobilizing capital and operations budgets, and the ability to identify projects. But also, to what purposes would you all want to utilize these credits? If we could scroll over to not slide number 3, but slide number 4. Because what these credits essentially do is, yep, that's the one. What these credits essentially do is they substitute out the need to have a longer duration or more expensive debt on the project, right? Typically, if the city were to undertake a project, even if it were to undertake a project with a private partner where the private partner does the investment and then does, for example, an energy PPA with the city, the project itself would involve equity of some kind, private equity, some sort of mezzanine and prime grade debt. And then, if the city was kicking in something potentially there as well. But what the elective pay credits do, especially the energy credits, which offset a significant percentage of the capital expenditure on energy projects, is they displace the need for some of those higher cost sources of capital that go into energy investment. Now, they don't do this right away, right? With an energy project in particular, they are only dispersed once the project is in operation. So the city would still need to procure the initial financing to get the project up and running, construction financing, bridge financing, and the like. But once that money is dispersed, then it's the city's choice what to do with it, right? It can pay down additional project debt or reinvest that money further in other purposes, should it choose. Next slide, please. Now, we are waiting on quite a bit of information with regard to how these credits will work in practice. So this tax season, we do anticipate entities across the country for the first time will start accessing these credits. But, we are waiting on some information. So the city of Fargo will be eligible. All of its instrumentalities will be eligible. We know you are able to stack these credits with other funding avenues. However, we are waiting on information on, for example, the extent to which you have to use certain kinds of domestic content or the extent to which you can get waivers on that content. If you are able to use domestic content, there is potentially a bonus in the credit amounts for you. But again, we are waiting to see how restrictive that requirement is. We're also waiting for information on what kinds of partnerships the city can engage in order to get projects built, if it so chooses. Can it go in on a project, for example, as a 50% holder on a particular property? Probably not. But there are other alternatives that work well with the credits. For example, a tenancy in common or other such joint investment or operation arrangements that leave the city as the actual owner, even if other aspects of project administration or project operation might be subcontracted or contracted to somebody else. Finally, we're also waiting on alternative financial arrangements that might enable the city to monetize the credits more quickly. The IRS has not indicated, for example, if the city could sell off the money that can be monetized to the credit ahead of time in order to get the money early. This is something that happens in the private sector all the time through the transferability arrangements and such. But we're not clear if that is available to public entities. And so we're waiting on information about that. The Center for Public Enterprise has been involved since the IRA passed on tracking each of these provisions, making comments to the IRS and engaging with the IRS to try and make it easier for cities, counties, and state agencies to access these credits, and we will continue to do so. If you'll go to the next slide. And my colleague, Advait, if he wants to, can you speak real briefly about the portal as well? Oh, it might be a slide for...
Yeah, so the slide and the next slide both have just description of the portal. That first slide is really just here's what we know and here's what we don't know. What we don't know is some of the remaining regulation around elective pay and a city's ability to, say, partner with other developers or how exactly they're going to meet domestic content requirements. But what we do know is how the portal works and how a city like Fargo can actually register or pre-register their projects to receive credits after tax season is done. I think the next slide goes through that. So if we want to switch to slide 7. Yeah. In summary, in actually like getting elective pay, you first have to, when you develop your project before you place it in service, you should generally be aware of what credits it could receive. Assuming you're putting together a rooftop solar installation, chances are you'd want to use the investment tax credit, 48E, as Ryan detailed. And you'd want to determine what tax year it's serviceable for. Once you've done that, there's a link at the IRS website to complete a pre-registration process. You'd want to do it about 120 days before a tax return is due in April, unless it's delayed or anything like that. And then in that pre-registration process, you have to make sure your project is actually placed in service and is operating and generating electricity before you can figure this all out. The steps essentially involve, in order, developing the project, placing it in service, having it generate electricity, then filing for pre-registration with the IRS, and then once tax season is done, getting your elective payment as a reimbursement. There are actually 2 different things to do in this particular process. First, you do the pre-registration through the portal at the IRS, and second, you fill out your normal set of tax forms through what's called the 990T exempt organization business income tax return and any other applicable credit-related documentation. And then you receive your elective payment. And what the Center for Public Enterprise has been advocating for is that for cities, green banks, states, as they're building up capacity to use elective pay, these state and city instrumentalities should use elective pay revenues to actually invest in further project development, which is perhaps elective pay eligible, earns elective pay in return. That elective payment can be reinvested in new projects. That's essentially a summary of the application process. I know I very quickly went through it earlier. I'm just doing it again. Hopefully this generally helps us all understand the loops and hoops that everyone has to go through in order to make this work.
And just to wrap up our presentation, and this is visible on the last slide as well, and we can send these along, send these documents along if you would like. Another aspect of our work, in addition to monitoring all of this rulemaking on elective pay, is to engage directly with cities and any partners that they work with on either utilizing these credits or thinking about how to utilize these credits. And to that end, we've created resources like, for example, our basic financial model on thinking through some of the planning questions associated with preparing for projects, looking at how a project might be built, looking at financing sources, and so on. We're happy to, on another occasion, go through that model or discuss elective pay more in detail. But I wanted to just mention that should the city or should this committee ever need resources or assistance in considering this issue further, we're happy to step in and provide help to the best of our ability. And thank you so much. We're happy to answer any questions if you have them.
We really appreciate this input today. You know, we probably could have spent a few hours
Yeah.
going through this information, and I would suggest that you keep in touch with Bruce Grubb, especially as a point person, so that when we move forward and we count on your resources, the timing is good. Any questions while we're wrapping up? Yes.
Yes. So, might have to talk to you after for time's sake, but so these shaded areas here, and the 10% bonus adder that you can get for projects, as well as the alternative fueling tax credit, is bound to this geographic area determined by the IRS as a low-income community if the population of the census tract has a poverty rate of at least 20%, or if the median family income for such a census tract does not exceed 80% of the statewide median family income. North Dakota has a quite high medium statewide family income, so I imagine that is why a lot of Fargo qualifies for that. And that is how you get the 10% bonus on the energy credit, and also the areas where the alternative fuel credit happens. Now, for the 20% bonus that you can get on projects, that's actually not geographically limited. That is limited by who is benefiting from the project. You need to be able to you need to have a claim to either selling some of the power at a reduced price or some other economic returns from that project to folks living in housing complexes that provide low-income housing services through some things like the Section 8 housing vouchers, the low-income housing tax credit, or USDA housing funds, or projects that directly, and I'm not sure exactly how the IRS verifies that, return those financial returns to a group of people that is verified to be at least like 51% of low income. I believe something along these metrics here of a certain percentage of them being, in the poverty line, or having a medium family income that does not exceed 80% of the statewide median.
So Ryan, what we might do is have you, if you could, after this is all done, share your contact information with Bruce and any details you'd like us to send out to the members of the committee. And we'll forward that to them. So if anybody has follow-up directly or with Bruce or with you individually, they will.
All right, sounds
good. Thank you so much for your information. It's a lot to process. I know you put a lot of preparation into this.
Yep.
It's really important stuff, and mostly it's just a beginning of a communication process going forward. So if we have resources now to reach out to. Anybody else? Okay. Sorry we're running so late, you guys, but this is valuable information. Bruce, do you have somebody in public comment? Yes. In public comment, we'll go over to that microphone, please.
So my name is Mark Taggart. I've been fairly active with various ecological and resilient sustainability related organizations in the past few years. We've ventured into doing much of what Ryan just demonstrated and discussed. We've put solar panels on our house. We've adopted an electric vehicle, and the outcome has been amazing, even for the contradictions of Bismarck, who declined to acknowledge solar panels as an efficient power source for electricity in the state of North Dakota. I hope that is soon remedied and rectified. I've written some notes to my perspective as the past year and where Fargo definitely has room for improvement. I am heartened gratefully by Ryan and the prior presenters from doing the fauna and vegetation awarenesses. Okay, so I'm here to amplify. I'm going to go to my notes here a bit and try to get through this. And I know your goal is to wrap up by 5 o'clock. I'll try to keep it to 5 or so minutes.
Goal was to wrap up by 4, but we're still here, so.
Okay, well, thank you for your extended time. I appreciate it. This needs more. This every 3 months is not enough. It's just not. To really hit and get at those goals of educating and communicating to the community, we need more than every 3 months and 1 hour. We need it. I'm visiting to articulate voices of agreement and from numerous of my friends and family that we share, all of varying conservative, independent, and liberal backgrounds. If an analogy would be helpful, when evidence presents poor health, you go to urgent care or an emergency room. Last summer's wildfire air quality and this December's 2023 flood, a first, a novelty to NOAA, NOAA records since its inception in 1889, we just had is a first. It has never happened in this city before. We have this past year numerous demonstrated significant presentations to the climate quality and the emergency that we are experiencing. These have emerged. We see them. We breathe them. We feel them. We walk within them. Again, thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Fargo Parks, and the leadership that was supporting the presentation earlier. They're both very heartening, and I hope I am as well. But we need to be sober and really attend to a lot of what needs to be done. I'm 50 years old plus, and I'm jittery as Ryan was, so please excuse me. Public presentation is not my norm. It has been challenging a lot the last few years to hear compliments to the youth and the likes of Greta Thunberg. We compliment them here in this chamber, in this space and time, but what happens is, John, you go back to the council, and we're trying to stand with you, we're trying to get you here, but it is demoralizing when you let the vote go to public on the Fargo Dome. There's nothing in that is sustainable and resilient to improve or to increase the pollution footprint that it would have created and what it would have perpetuated. Now, with my circle of friends, there's nobody who opposed the ADA improvements. Our vote was primarily that we see this as something that should not be done for the pollution element that it would have occurred, as well as the financial stresses that many of our friends and families are seeing with increased taxes in the city. That's one example. Construction, so it baffles my mind and many of my friends and family when we see the Hector Airport going to increase in double size. That's another example. I don't understand it. Jet fuel is not getting better, and even if it is, doubling the traffic doesn't it doesn't balance. It doesn't take a lot of detail and going through to articulate that. It just, we don't see it. Alongside building car garages to go with it, to park your car and then fly another direction. It just doesn't add up. And we need more electric charging discussions as to the buildings that we have. I know we have one carport building that has charging in it, but the hospitals could really do for having that support, and perhaps with what Ryan has presented, there will be avenues for that to occur. So that's construction. Local transportation, buses. Last winter, it doesn't get talked about. I appreciate that Matt is here, but it was a significant blow of astonishment in a negative way to see that we're adding diesel buses into the mix, not hybrid, not electric. That I don't quite fully comprehend. Along with transportation, speed limits. I'm constantly getting passed. I'm driving the speed limit. I'm even going 26 to 27 miles per hour in 25 zones. And these are not zone. This is Second Avenue. This is Second Street to Fourth, where you pass Prairie St. John's, you pass Island Park, you pass this building, you pass Horace Mann, and you go on the way up. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour, folks. Please slow down. It's good for two reasons. It'll reduce accidents, one. That'll reduce heavy equipment from coming in and having to follow up with more diesel, big diesel vehicles. You'll save some gas. I appreciate the circle. A little fine tuning is necessary, I think, on slow down as you go into it. Pedestrian traffic has diminished a lot in that intersection. I don't know if people have noticed or not, but people aren't walking, and that's a critical pathway for pedestrians who otherwise have to take the risk of crossing the train tracks. We do have lower speed limits at the other circles throughout the city in the extended West Fargo and South Fargo areas where the circles are. A slower speed limit going into that, I think, would be helpful. The pedestrian signs are useful, but to see a number, I think, would kind of get people's awarenesses a little bit more. People, I don't think, see the pedestrian sign. And Brenda, and I appreciate an extension. I've been communicating with Denise Kolpak, who's brought some of these things to your attention, and I hope that some of those will be useful. All right. Transportation, one last one, but I still have some more stuff. Pedestrian and scooter and bike paths, better consistent reading roadways would be helpful. It varies from different streets. Sometimes you have a green zone, sometimes you have this dotted green whatever zone or something like that. It's confusing and it's awkward. Something consistent, something solid, and something reliable throughout the whole year would be useful. And please clean them. The pebbles, the debris in the bike lanes, the existing bike lanes are very difficult. I mean, it's so easy to slide on those little marbles. I would say that's even the case with a mountain bike. Okay, so back to evidence. We just had our 24th flood this last century in December. It was our first one in December ever. More leadership, more communication would be appreciated. A friend of mine didn't check their sump pump because it wasn't talked about. It wasn't I was listening, I was trying to tune in. I didn't hear the city, and Mayor Mahoney's been good at this in the past with other floods, of saying to the notes of, hey folks, it's that time of year again. But December wasn't. December was not typical And there wasn't a reminder. And there was nothing like Facebook is my primary social media, whatever. Reflecting back, there just weren't. Sure, yes, there was notifications that there's a flood coming, but the commonalities of, okay, folks, let's pull together, remember, do these things, these core things. First, check your sump pumps. Do whatever it is that you normally do. I think that could have been very useful in my friend's situation. And the number of floods, it's staggering. And I have a graphic that I've been sharing. The breakouts of if you split the years of existence of Fargo in half, we have 75% of our floods in this latter half. 90% of them, 90% of the top 10 floods remain in that latter half. 80% of the floods are like within the last 35 years, 75 to 80%. We're nearing a consistent flood every year this century up to 2023. Some without, but a new change, like a very visible, is that we have years with 2 floods. And if you look in the prior half of that record, you don't have 2 floods. There aren't 2 floods. Okay, so I'm down to my last of my primary section bullets. And I appreciate I'm unloading a lot of perspectives here. Culture. The guidelines for solar and wind in the city feel too restrictive and discouraging when you go to the website. If you could, there are significant improvements that Ryan touched on. Less expensive and more responsive. And with more responsive, I'm finding I set solar panels in the front south windows of my house. You don't really notice it. But I'm charging a battery, which is like capable of charging other things and like running crock pots and laptops, and we've done tailgating with them and numerous things. Plugging in a hand drill into these little portable battery packs is something that you can do. Not your heavy impact drill, but just like a little 3-amp drill can work. Or maybe it's a 2-amp, I'm not sure. Anyhow, not important. So please, if you could go back and look at the guidelines and the structures, the way solar panels are permitted, and open those up. I'm seeing experiences of people doing vertical solar panels facing south, and getting responses from it. And we've experienced it ourselves, and especially in the winter when we have that low sun. All right, let me look here. But right now, the language is written in a way that is, you can only put them on the roof of your house, or you can only put them in the back of your yard on the flat plane. If there could be some extensions to maybe perhaps opening it up so that you could have them on the front of your south-facing house would be a consideration, and perhaps there's a discussion there. To culture, to technology, or just to culture. We've shut down our school gyms from the neighbors to walk inside their gyms, and consequently we force them to travel longer distances across the metro area. Please revisit this within our public schools and give our schools back to our expanded communities. Otherwise, people are either traveling or they're having to buy into gym subscriptions, and then they're walking on walking tracks or very small tracks. And if you're on a treadmill, you're you're running electricity and, yeah, so I think you get the point. Again, the next thing I was going to say here was to talk to the Fargo Park District. It was really disheartening to see those 70 mature trees get cut down. I am grateful that we are planting. It'd be nice to see it, like, we should have done that, like announce it or communicate it that we are going to plant this strip so that we can shift something else out, like be proactive rather than reactive. What we're doing now is reactive. We are reactively planting places. Please, for the next 50 years, let's be proactive. In advance. Look forward. Or look forward better. And then this is my last of my significant bullets. May pickup wake is quickly approaching. We desperately need a revision to its culture. The throwaway culture of Fargo is accelerated. I have numerous photos, videos, seemingly decent pieces of furniture being crushed. Curb donating is not effective when trucks are within a block ready to crush items. We need another outlet to redirect light repair items, perhaps a week separate of May, and not to set fabric furniture to be damaged by weather at the time. And to significantly note, city employees at the landfill agree with me in the shared disappointment. They see numerous repairable items showing up. It's challenging when the city has a video on its website enabling and leading functional repairable items into the fill. I don't know if that video is still up. It was about a month ago as I made that note when I was writing this. If a city organization to model is helpful, I know you guys communicate with other cities. There's like a network there. The Catholic Worker House in Denver, Colorado, where my late wife and I connected in our initial year, is one to consider. There are numerous thrift stores in our community who do wonderful work. It is still sad to feel the loss of the contributions that LSS did and we contributed and related, especially as we had numerous refugees coming into our community 5 to 10 years ago. So please lead more appropriately and effectively. Increase the vitality and the intentions of what can be done from this meeting. That is a lot of unloading of perspective. I'll follow up and share this with us an email to where what I articulated could be improved. If you need proposals written, if that's what you need, let us know. John, I know you asked, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We need you to let us know what we can do, or other like leaderships within the city. Make a call for requests. What is it that we need to supply you to vote on when this part of the building is filled and you're lensing our perspectives. Again, evidence continues to increase the emerging symptoms of what should be regarded and recognized as a climate emergency. And to be respectful of the space in which we walk and where we live, I'm going to extend and try to strengthen the peoples that were here before us. Miigwech, thank you. Padame. That's it. I have everything. Thank you.
We've had a long meeting, but I want to acknowledge your voice today and the reality that you reflect a lot of folks out there and a lot of citizenry. And this is good thinking for us to have shared with us. Is there anything else for the good of the order today? We've had a long meeting, but a lot of information. Bruce, if we can follow up with anybody, and if you need any detail after this, let us know, and we'll get this information back to you, or these contact points, or some of the graph. They all have these PowerPoints, don't they, Bruce?
The last two The hard copy I passed out, you don't have electronically.
Okay.
And the final, that quick piece, we just got electronically right before the meeting. So I'll distribute both of those electronically to everybody.
Perfect. Okay. Anything else for today? Thanks, everyone. Bruce, when's our next meeting? April 9th. Okay, we're adjourned until then. Okay.